ESPN Sports Science.
We're breaking down our top plays of the NFL season. From heads-up offense to hard-nosed defense. We're breaking down the physics of flight, the geometry of pursuit, and the stunning athleticism of football's finest.
I'm John Brinkus, and these are the ESPN Sports Science top NFL plays of the year. When we analyze football, we can find something amazing in every single down. Some plays reveal a lifetime of practice that results in a moment of perfection. Some are rooted in instinct and improv, and others simply reveal the true nature of the game, barely controlled chaos. Well, we've spent the season analyzing the best plays every week, and we've narrowed them down to our top 10 plays of the year. And we begin in San Diego.
Back in week 6, after being down 24-0 to the Chargers at halftime, the Broncos stormed all the way back and took the lead with this spectacular throw and catch. As Manning releases the ball, Brandon Stokely is still 12 yards from the end zone and engaged with Chargers corner Marcus Gilchrist. In fact, throughout the entire route, Stokely never gets more than 2 feet of separation. But despite this smothering coverage, Manning releases a 50-mile-an-hour strike that squeezes through about a 36-square-inch window and misses the defender's hand by just half an inch, about the length of a fingernail. That means Manning hits a window less than a tenth of the size of an average strike zone, even though he throws it from a distance twice as far as a pitcher's mound to home plate. To catch the ball, Stokely times his jump perfectly to meet the ball at the apex of his jump, about 8.5 feet off the ground. If he had launched just a tenth of a second sooner or later, the ball would have sailed over Stokely incomplete. After Stokely snags the ball, he rotates his body 90 degrees while airborne to locate the sideline. After landing on one foot, roughly 18 inches from the sideline, Stokely manages to get both feet inbounds in just 0.3 of a second. That's less time than it took Manning to release the ball, but enough time to secure the touchdown and the Broncos' historic comeback. Number 9 on our countdown occurred in week 5 when Percy Harvin double juked the Titans' D to put 6 on the board for the Vikings. After catching a bubble screen at the 16, Harvin accelerates to 15 miles an hour, goes to 0, then back up to 10 miles an hour, and then back to 0. All in only 1.4 seconds. And that was just to get back to the line of scrimmage. Each of these jukes generates about 4 G's of force, more G's than downhill slalom skiers experience when carving a turn. And like a skier, during his second cut, Harvin's legs are angled at about 30 degrees, while his torso is virtually level. To complete this juke, he actually cracks his body like a whip. He snaps his shoulders to the left and stops them, the same way the handle of a whip stops when you begin a whip crack. And like the energy is transferred from the stopped handle into the whip, the energy created in Harvin's torso flies into his lower body. His feet shift about a yard in less than a third of a second, faster than most quarterbacks can get off a pass. The result is another missed tackle. When the Titans' Akeem Ayers finally gets 2 hands on Harvin, the contact actually steers Harvin away from another defender. It also increases his speed by roughly 15%, just enough to help Percy Harvin rack up 6 and nail down the 9th spot on our list. Next on the countdown comes from week 11. It's an amazing display of team effort when the Cardinals forced and recovered a Falcon fumble. To force the fumble, Cardinals linebacker Sam Acho manages to hit a target roughly the size of a baseball, even at a pursuit speed of 18 miles an hour. The punched-out ball rotates primarily around its long axis, which results in a bounce that only changes direction by about 10 degrees. But even with this relatively small deviation, in other words, a good bounce, Arizona's Greg Toller has only 1.03 seconds to reach the ball before it lands out of bounds. Less than 0.2 of a second after the bounce, Toller reacts, and with 3 quick steps, he changes the direction of his momentum by nearly 90 degrees. With his toe about a thumbtack's width from OB and arms fully extended, Toller snags the ball 3 feet out of bounds and only about a foot above the turf. Although he launches his center of mass nearly 4 feet in the air after the grab, Toller still doesn't have enough time for significant elbow flexion, the bending that increases leverage necessary for a forceful throw. So he essentially redirects the ball with a catch and release that takes only 0.16 of a second, about half the time of a quarterback's quickest release. And although he's throwing opposite his momentum and positioned for a face plant, Toller generates enough force on the ball to hit Rashad Johnson. Johnson secures the turnover and ensures that Greg Toller's heads-up improvisation locks down the number 8 spot on our list. In week 14, Anthony Fasano, Chris Durham, and Randall Cobb all brought down highlight reel one-handed catches. But the best, hands down, was Jason Avant's spectacular circus catch. Compared to a 2-hand reach, a 1-hand reach allows for more shoulder rotation, creating a biomechanical advantage that gives Avant up to 4 additional inches of extension. And Avant needs every inch as he arches his back to get to the ball about 8 feet off the ground behind him. And although reaching the ball is a display of Avant's athletic ability, he may have had a little help bringing it in. Tests conducted in the ESPN Sports Science lab reveal that the coefficient of friction or stickiness between silicone receiver gloves and a football's leather is more than 3 times greater than bare hands. This extra grip helps Avant maintain control of the ball in the palm of his hand as it decelerates from more than 40 miles an hour to nearly 0 in just about a 1/10 of a second. About the same amount of time it takes a Venus flytrap to snap shut. And using only his right hand enables Avant to brace his fall with his left. Not only does this reduce impact force and the chances of the ball being knocked loose, but it lands his elbow inbounds just 0.15 of a second before his head lands out of bounds.
This season, there will be roughly 10,000 receptions, and none better than that one. We'll be back in a moment with more of the ESPN Sports Science Top NFL Plays of the Year.
ESPN Sports Science NFL Plays of the Year special.
Before the very first week of the 2012 season was in the books, one player had already put his name in the record book.
When San Francisco's David Akers tied the NFL record for the longest field goal with an incredible 63-yard boot. Compared to a 40-yard field goal from 63 yards, Akers' target shrinks by roughly 36%. And at that distance, the ball sails wide if his lateral contact is off by about 1/3 of an inch. That's a margin of error as small as the width of a shoelace. Unlike Jason Elam and Sebastian Janikowski, who both tied Tom Dempsey's record with kicks in the thin air of Mile High Stadium, Akers' kick was in Green Bay, where air is about 16% denser than the air in Denver. Akers needed to unleash nearly a ton of force on the ball, launching it at roughly 90 miles an hour. Now, for an NFL kicker who has a leg powerful enough to kick a ball that far, and to have it bounce just right off the crossbar, statisticians conservatively estimate the odds of success at 1 in 100,000. But regardless of the long odds against this long kick, for David Akers, it added up to 3 points and a spot in the NFL record book. Number 5 on our list is held down by Joseph Morgan, whose ninja skills sent the Bucs flipping and put 6 points on the board for the Saints. Just 0.2 of a second after Morgan catches the pass from Drew Brees, Bucs defender Mark Barron gets a hand on a ducking Morgan. But with Morgan's legs applying the brakes at a 40-degree angle and roughly 88% of his body's weight outside his base of support, Barron's hand actually keeps Morgan from falling. And Barron provides enough torque to rotate Morgan's body more than 90 degrees, allowing him to get his arm down to temporarily support the majority of his weight. This allows Morgan to regain his balance, even while his knee is about an inch from the ground, a distance less than half the width of the number 1 on his jersey. There are 2 reasons Morgan is able to flip defender Eric Wright. Like a judo expert, Morgan utilizes the principle of leverage to use Wright's own momentum against him. Morgan times his pop-up perfectly, and with the majority of Wright's mass beyond the rising pivot point of Morgan's shoulder, Wright flips head over heels at about 540 degrees per second. But this is only possible because Wright initiates the upward momentum in an instant all men can identify as self-preservation. If Morgan had raised his head just 1/10 of a second sooner, he would have missed the opportunity to go through Wright's legs, and the outcome would have been different for both players. Finally, Morgan does a 180 and heads for the house. He's hit by E.J. Biggers at the 3 with an estimated 1,000 pounds of force. But the glancing blow comes too late. Morgan has already started his dive. He lands in the end zone and at number 5 on our top 10 list. Number 4 is the play of the Bears' Charles Tillman, who forced 4 fumbles in Week 9 against the Titans. When a player is protecting the ball with 4 contact points, the hand, forearm, bicep, and chest, our tests have shown it can take up to 1,000 pounds of force to jar it loose. So to punch the ball out of Titans receiver Kenny Britt's grasp, Tillman uses a technique similar to a board-breaking martial artist, making contact with the ball when his arm is 70 to 80% through its punching motion. This is when his fist reaches its highest velocity, which maximizes force on the ball. To amplify this force, Tillman makes contact with his knuckles. This concentrates the force, focusing it on less than 2 square inches of the ball. The result is a technique which can generate strikes approaching half a ton of force. Equally as important as Peanut's technique is his accuracy. To knock the ball out, he has to find a target that's only about 3% of the ball carrier's total surface area. And while moving in unpredictable directions, Tillman is still able to locate the target on speedy ball carriers like Chris Johnson and Jarrett Lewis, all in windows of opportunity that are open for as little as a third of a second. That's as long as a single beat of a running back's racing heart. All told, Tillman can deliver knockout punches that are as powerful and accurate as an elite boxer, all while running at speeds approaching 20 miles an hour. This may be why Charles Tillman leads the league in forced fumbles and grabs the number 4 spot on our list.
Through week 15, Charles Tillman had a league-leading total of 10 forced fumbles. That's actually a higher total than several entire teams. Our top 3 plays are coming up when we return with the ESPN Sports Science Top NFL Plays of the Year. The Year Special. Number 3 on our list happened in week 12, and it was simply one of the biggest clutch plays of the year. It was Ray Rice's improbable 4th and 29 conversion, which kept a last-minute drive alive for the Ravens and led to a win over the Chargers. When Rice makes the catch, he's still 28 yards away from the first down marker with 7 defenders in front of him. As Rice jukes at the 50, his right foot and ankle joint are subjected to more than 600 pounds of force, more than the weight of 3 average refrigerators. This change of direction fools Demario Williams, starting a chain reaction that results in 3 defenders taking each other out in just 2/3 of a second. Rather than playing contained defense at the first down marker, Chargers corner Corey Lynch starts toward where Rice is rather than where he's going. This forces Lynch to take a curved pursuit. If Lynch had run a straight line, he would have needed to cover about 40% less ground and would have beaten Rice to the 45 by about a full second. But because of this poor pursuit angle, Lynch never even gets within a yard of Rice. To help Rice through the last line of defense, Ravens receiver Anquan Bolden delivers a block to Eric Weddle with more than 1,000 pounds of force. And at 5'8", 5 inches shorter than the average Chargers defender, Rice has the lowest center of gravity on the field. This extra stability helps him get 5.5 additional yards after being knocked off balance, just enough to secure the first down. All told, after the catch, Rice runs a total of almost 45 yards. This was the longest 4th down conversion in more than 10 years. One of the most controversial plays of the year was Week 3's disputed Hail Mary that lifted the Seahawks over the Packers. As Russell Wilson's 48-yard pass descends, the Packers' M.D. Jennings, with a vertical leap of more than 30 inches, makes first contact with the ball. He initially catches it with his wrists, forming only 2 contact points. But within 0.06 of a second, he wraps his hands around the ball. At this point, a 3rd Packer hand joins Jennings to cover close to 50% of the ball's surface area. But Golden Tate's left hand has made only partial contact with the ball. His right hand, however, isn't touching the ball at all. He's actually holding on to Jennings' wrist. This makes a simultaneous catch a physical impossibility. Failing to grip the ball, Tate releases Jennings' wrist, and then he doesn't get his right hand on the ball itself until more than half a second after Jennings has secured it.
With a protective hold that can take close to 1,000 pounds of force to break, Jennings secures the ball and falls to the ground with what should have been considered an interception. Yet, inexplicably, one official starts to signal touchdown 0.3 of a second before the other waves it off. And upon further review, the ruling on the field was upheld, giving Seattle a touchdown and the win.
So I guess it could be reasoned that if holding a player who has possession of the ball is a catch, then every tackle could be considered an interception. Maybe it was the replacement official's new transitive property of possession. We'll be right back with more of the ESPN Sports Science Top NFL Plays of the Year.
NFL Plays of the Year special.
When it was time to pick our top play of the year, there was little debate. You could call it a walk-off TD, but it was more of a liftoff.
Back in Week 8, Indy's Vic Ballard took a screen pass from Andrew Luck and turned it into a spectacular TD, lifting the Colts over the Titans. After catching the ball at the 21-yard line, Ballard accelerates to a top speed of more than 20 miles an hour before initiating his leap. This speed is crucial to launch his body 15.5 feet, nearly the length of 2 Colts. And just a 1 mile an hour decrease in speed can result in a loss of 16 inches in a long jump. That means instead of scoring by the nose of the football, he would have been about a football length short. But of course, Ballard doesn't score with speed alone. As he crosses the 5-yard line, with Titans defender Ryan Mouton about to make contact, Ballard instinctively turns his back to protect the ball. Then Ballard uses a technique similar to a high jumper's Fosbury flop to get his entire body about 4 feet off the ground, corkscrewing over Mouton. This move did more than just help him clear the defender. Once he leaves his feet, Ballard cannot change the parabolic trajectory of his center of mass. In a straight jump, would have taken him and the ball out of bounds. But the twist allows him to change the path of the ball itself. By extending it away from his point of rotation, he's able to keep the ball in bounds, even while more than 50% of his body is out of bounds. All told, Ballard's speed and technique allow him to stay airborne for nearly 0.7 of a second. Just 23% less flight time than Luck's pass. And because of this incredible hang time and body control, Vic Ballard was able to lift the Colts to victory and land our top play of the year.
And those are the top 10 plays of the season. We'll be back next year with more detailed analysis of the game's best plays. Because whether a player is flying through the air or waging war in the trenches, in the middle of all the chaos, we can always uncover amazing science. For ESPN Sports Science, I'm John Brinkus.